Hey everybody, this is the recording. This is actually the recording for day number 22. Yesterday I said that I was going to come on either yesterday or today and post the information for day number 22. Well, here I am with the day number 22, and as always, thank you all for your support. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you. And guys, continue to share, watch, listen, share, and continue to send your encouragement, your prayer requests, your testimonies, your praise reports. Email them to 40days@cynthiamcclary.com. We are here to pray with you, to pray for you. We're here to celebrate with you. That's what we're doing. We're celebrating with you. Listen, when one of us achieve, all of us achieve. Yes, that is what families do. When one make it, we all make it. We all make it. So we're all in this together. And I thank you all for being a part of this process and sticking in it and trusting God through the process. I thank you all so much. So day 22 is about justified, being justified. And justification or justified simply means that God has done something. God has redeemed us. And because of his redemption, because we've been redeemed, he has declared and he has made us righteous. So he has made us in right standing. He has placed us in the position of being in right standing with God. He has made us righteous. It's not anything that we did on our own or anything it's nothing that we did or nothing that qualified us. It's the simple fact that he redeemed us. And through that redemption, he declared that we're justified. It's almost like point blank, period. Because of what he did, not what we've done, not what we can ever do, not what we're doing, but because of what he did, because of what somebody else did, because of what he did. Now we are able to sit in the place and to live in the place of being justified, being made right with God. Not because of what we did, but because of what he did. And the thing with justification, Romans tells us that, God foreknew us, meaning he knew us before we knew ourselves. He knew us before our mom and daddy even knew us. So he foreknew us before time even began. He knew us. Not only did he foreknew us, but he predestined us, meaning he planned out our lives. He planned out our victories. He planned out our end before even the first moment of our lives began. It was already planned out by him. And not only did he foreknew us, but he predestined us. And in that predestining us, he called us. Meaning, not only did he call us to himself, but he also called us who we were to become. He called us who we were to become. So even in our marriages, even in our families, even in our lives, he called us. Even before we knew him, he called us in our marriages who we would become. So he called us not an okay husband, not a halfway making it wife or sons and daughters. No, he called us. He just in the same way that he ordained or he called Jeremiah a prophet before Jeremiah even knew who Jeremiah was. He did the same thing with us. He called us who we would become. He called us not as we were, but who we would become. So he has called us everything that we are. He's called us everything that we are. And then he justified us. He justified us. And in justifying us, he declared, listen, they're all in a right standing with me. They're all in a right standing with me. And what does being in right standing with God mean for our marriages and our families? It simply means that he has given you everything that you need, that we need, in order to be the spouses, in order to be the husbands, in order to be the wives, and in order to be the children that he's already spoken to us concerning. We're justified. We're justified. A price has already been paid for everything. A price has already been paid. So all we have to do now is live in what he's already paid for. We have to live in what God has already paid for. So we're justified. What happens though sometimes is, especially as we're going through this process of hope and healing, what happens a whole lot of time is our mind cannot conceive, or our mind does not comprehend the process of justification. Our mind was originally programmed, our mind, the worldly part of our mind was originally programmed to sense that we must qualify in order to be justified. But what God is saying is no, justification comes first. And when justification came, justification brought with it qualification. So sometimes we find ourselves trying to work up to a standard. We find ourselves trying to gain strength up to a standard, and a whole lot of times we're disappointed in that process. And we're disappointed in that process because we're trying to live up to a standard that no longer exists. We're trying to live up to a standard that only fails. And that standard is qualify first, then I'll justify you. Well, that's not the standard of God. The standard of God is you are justified, and because you are justified, you're automatically qualified. So we don't have to qualify for the blessings. We don't have to qualify for the promises of God. We're justified, and justification brought all of the qualifications that we needed to receive everything that God has given us. So we're qualified, we're justified and qualified because of what Christ did. We're justified and qualified to receive every single thing that he has for us. We don't have to work up to it. We don't have to work up to it. Sometimes we think that we have to earn God's trust, or we have to earn, things in God. And God says there is absolutely nothing that you can do that can earn my love, that can earn my trust, you cannot earn the blessings of God. That's where justification comes in. Justification came and it brought with it qualification. So what do we have to do? In this process, we have to get rid of the old way of thinking. And that old way of thinking is you qualify first, and then maybe or maybe not, you'll be justified. That's the old way of thinking. Well, what we have to do in order to move forward is we have to change that mindset. We have to get rid of the old mindset. The Word of God tells us that transformation comes through our mind. It's in Romans 12:1 says, "Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind." So we have to renew our minds. Even though our mind is not able to understand the concept of, I don't have to qualify to be justified. Justification came and qualified me. Our minds don't understand that. And so sometimes our mind shifts back to that old way of thinking, but we have to let go of that old way of thinking. We don't qualify, and then the decision is made to be justified. Justification came and brought with it qualification. And so, we have to go about the process of having our minds renewed, having our minds transformed. And until our mind is transformed, we're always going to remain in the position, in the place of conforming to the world or conforming to the old way of thinking. And so what are some of the symptoms of the old way of thinking? Some of the symptoms of the old way of thinking is I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. I'm not strong enough. I don't deserve it. I am not able to walk where God is calling me. I'm not able to do what God is calling me to do. These are some of the symptoms of some of the mindsets that occur when we're living when we're living outside of God's justification. We accept leftovers. We accept leftovers. Whenever you don't know who you are, you accept leftovers. You accept leftovers. Not only that, but you become a beggar and a victim instead of a champion and a victor. And we allow that old mindset to keep us out of where God is calling us. We allow that old mindset to keep us in a place of mediocrity, in a place of complacency, in a place of you begin to accept where you are right now as your permanent place, as your permanent position. But none of those things are the truth. None of those things are the truth. So we have to go through the process of transforming, renewing our minds so that the transformation can happen. And so how do we go through that process? Well, we go through that process by using the same tools that God is giving us right now. Instruction, promise, His word. We go through that process of renewing our mind by listening to His instructions. And I think it may have been on day 3 where we talked about saying whatever it is that God has said, that is what you say. That is what you say. That is what you see. That is what you believe. That is what you know. So we have to put those disciplines. We have to put those instructions. We have to put those things into practice, so that the old mindset doesn't keep us in the place where we're not growing, so that it doesn't keep us in the place where we're literally thinking, well, these chains are on me. These chains are binding me. And so I cannot move forward. I cannot go forward. I cannot progress forward. We have to get rid of those things. We have to get rid of those things. And the only way to get rid of those things is to bring in the new mindset. Now, the Word of God also tells us that you cannot put new wine into old wineskin. And basically and the reason why you can't do that is because if you do, the strength of the new stuff is going to cause the old thing to bust open. And technically you would think, well, that's a good thing. Well, if the liquid that you have in the old thing that burst open, what happens to that liquid? It's immediately destroyed because it comes from out of whatever vessel just burst, right? So what you have to do is you have to put aside, you have to rebuke, you have to get rid of that old mindset. And you have to go into a process of creating something new to contain this new thing that you're getting. And the thing that you're creating to contain the new thing that you're getting is actually faith. Because everything that is taking place right now, the only way that we're able to contain it is we have to contain it in the vessel called faith. It is through that faith, it is through our faith that we're able to live in justification, that we're able to live in redemption, that salvation comes, is through faith. It's through our faith. So faith has to replace the old mindset. By faith, we're justified, and by faith, justification brought the qualification. So faith is that new vessel, that new vessel that we have to operate in. And remember, faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. So if we're going to operate in this new vessel, then we have to keep hearing. So we have to go back to the spiritual disciplines, and we have to keep hearing what God is saying. We have to keep hearing what he's saying. And what he's saying is his word, his promise, and every single instruction that he has given us. And because faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God, that means that we do have to open our mouth. We do have to open our mouth, and consistently. There's always going to be, and I shouldn't say always, but there is a competition between the old and the new. And if you're not careful, if we're not careful, we will allow the old to come in and replace what is new. That's not what we're desiring in this process here. We don't desire that, and that's not what we're going to get. So we're going to do the things that God has instructed us to do through his word, through his promises. We're going to do those things. We're going to hear what he says, and we're going to keep saying what he says. He says, you're justified. Yes, you can be the man of God that I've called you to be. Why? Because you're justified. And with justification comes all of the qualifications that you need. And with the qualification comes every equipping, everything that you need, every piece of equipment that you need to be the man of God that God has called you to be. Every single piece of equipment that you need to be the husband that God has called you to be the wife, the woman of God that God has called you to be. Every single thing, he's already given it to you. It's our responsibility now to walk in those things, to take those things and to walk in them by faith, because we're already justified. We're justified. You're justified. You're justified, and you do not have to qualify for anything, because when justification came, it brought all of the qualification, and along with the qualification came every piece of equipment, every tool that you need to be everything that God has called you to be. Guys, I love you, and I will see you later.